Insights. I'm one of the co-founders, and today we are going to have a fabulous conversation with Tyler Mashker. I'm super psyched about this. This is a CMO LinkedIn Learning Lab, so folks that are joining us, hopefully you'll get a lot out of it. We try to go through different marketing and advertising cases from leaders in the branding world who are using generative AI in various ways to help their marketing efforts and just generally share learnings with marketers, advertisers, agency folks, creator types. So I'm delighted today to have Tyler Mashker from Twilio to join us. Tyler is fascinating in that he is one of the winners of the Create Real Magic campaign contest that Coca-Cola launched and has been so wildly successful in doing. And Tyler has gone from being an enthusiast, kind of in art, fashion, and design, to now being like a celebrated, world-renowned AI artist. So he agreed to join us in our conversation today and share a little bit about his journey. Before we get into that, I want to talk to you just a little bit about what GAI Insights is. Paul Beyer, who you'll see, he's on the screen. He's going to help us in the tech side, but he is the CEO founder of GAI Insights. And really, it was a bunch of us who came together under Paul's leadership. We were doing Monday learning labs, and it was really a bunch of enthusiasts trying to keep up with generative AI and what it is and how do you use it and what the risks are and what are large language models. And I started taking this class and then ended up partnering with him and 4 others to help brands, companies learn the technology, how to implement it. We ended up doing our first conference in September with leaders at MIT and Harvard and got a group of us together to learn about and share case studies. And that's where this was born. So this segment on LinkedIn is for CMOs and advertisers and creators and advertising types. And we're going to share case studies. And it's really just a bunch of us enthusiasts. But follow us on LinkedIn, GAI Insights. And if you're interested in learning and going along the journey with us, I think you'll get a lot out of it. So with that, let me turn it over to Tyler. Tyler, tell us a little bit about your journey with Coke. We had seen a lot of headlines with Pratik Thakar, who is the global head of generative AI from Coke. And he has been a leader, and he was one of the first senior executives put in that kind of a position to lead the generative AI initiatives, and him putting together a group of creators and a contest to bring artists together to help him in his campaign. Tell us a little bit about how that went down, how you even got invited in, and how the heck you won the contest.
Yeah. So Liz, Paul, thank you for having me today. I greatly appreciate it. Looking forward to the opportunity. Just some background on kind of how I got involved in the contest and kind of how the contest came to be once, we got there and found out kind of the origins of it. It's really interesting. And I think Coca-Cola has done an exceptional job and really a world-class job of taking generative AI and not being afraid of it, but embracing it. And the Create Real Magic program is a great example of that, where they took, a couple agencies and some creatives and put together 100 images where they launched the campaign, right? They created a platform that said their goal is to democratize creative and marketing and art. How do you allow anybody without the skills that traditionally didn't have technical background or a painting background or a marketing background? How do you let somebody take an idea and bring that to life? And they did that with their Real Magic platform, originally starting with DALL-E 2.0, where they allowed you to take classic Coke assets, like maybe the silhouette of a bottle or a polar bear, and create an image that spoke to you. So I have, being in marketing and selling SaaS solutions to various Fortune 500 companies over the years, I consider myself much to be a marketer. I happen to sell technology, but I sell it to marketing teams and work on the strategies for those. So when I saw this campaign, it was something that I wanted to check it out, right? I'd been using ChatGPT and all the GPT equivalents across the board heavily in my day-to-day process. So when you start to then think about what can you do from a creative standpoint using the same technology, it piqued my interest. So when I saw it on LinkedIn, they were saying, hey, create real magic. Here's a kind of a little blurb about it. And I went and started messing around with the tool and picking and choosing and just trying to decide what I wanted to do. And created a couple images. Didn't think a whole lot of it. Originally was actually using those images. Coca-Cola is a prospect of mine for my day job. And I was going to use those artworks that I got back out of that platform to invite people to the Porsche driving experience in Atlanta. So I had a tactical reason for doing it. And I knew it was part of a contest, but it wasn't something that I was thinking of, long term of, hey, like, I have a real chance of being invited into this room with these other collaborators. It was mostly, I want to create this image. This is great. This is an awesome tool. I got some value out of it because we got some RSVPs for an event and didn't think much of it. And a few months later, I had an email in my inbox letting me know that my images had been selected and that I won. I truthfully didn't believe it when I saw it. I went to the Create Real Magic website, and lo and behold, they were there on the website.
Well, we are thrilled to see this. So those of us that aren't creator types, and I want to back you up for just a
Yeah,
second about this because I think this is completely fascinating, and I want to ask you about how you got involved in the contest and all of the collaborators that were involved in this. So from Coke's side, what we had read and heard is that Bain was involved, a company called High Snobity was involved. I love
yeah.
that. And from the fashion side, a bathing ape, Nvidia. So tell us a little bit about, you saw it on LinkedIn, but how many other, like, how did these collaborations work when they introduced the contest, and how did that work? How did Coke make that a success?
Yeah, so Coke did a fantastic job when they brought us all to Atlanta. They brought in roughly 30 creators from around the world, and brought in a bunch of their partners, and didn't just bring them in virtually. We all sat in the same room, from Bain to High Snobiety to Bape, to the team from Nvidia, the Coca-Cola legal team and copyright teams, their masterpiece and collectibles teams. They brought really all hands on deck, and brought us all to one location for a week where we worked on, with Bain, we worked on Create Real Magic 2.0, where we actually took the Christmas card platform that's live right now for Coca-Cola. And they had some mock-ups and some renderings and ideas on what that platform could look like. And we gave them detailed feedback on everything from their user experience to how the social community should work, down to how and why should I use the Coca-Cola Christmas card platform versus any other platform that's out there. How do you make this something that really has that magic that Coke's looking for? They brought us in the room to give that detailed feedback. With High Snobiety, they had a New York Fashion Week initiative, right? They were actually going to be doing a zero sugar pop-up with Coca-Cola at New York Fashion Week 3 weeks after we were going to be in Atlanta. So we were working on things that were going to be brought from a concept to a real idea in 3 weeks for New York Fashion Week. So being able to take just an idea of, I've never designed clothing in my life. I've never thought about dresses or how this could look in a specific aesthetic of a fashion show or a fashion display, right? That's not something that I've ever thought about in my entire life, but they brought us in a room and gave us an idea of, here's what we're looking for. Now go show us what you can create. And being able to work with, all the artists in that room. I'd never used some of the technologies and the tools that they were using, but was able to sit, watch, learn, pick up, and create outputs that were used, that Coca-Cola moved forward with and worked with High Snobiety and Bape and other companies to actually bring to life ideas that we came out of these sessions.
So what I had heard is, so backing up, there were, out of hundreds of millions of submissions of artwork in this contest that you submitted and actually got chosen for, you mentioned there were how many winners that were actually invited to this 3-day conference where you guys were exposed to all of these various collaborative companies and kind of introduced to what the project was. So tell us a little bit about how many folks started, how many winners were in the room, how did that work?
Yeah, so we had roughly 30 winners. There was some mix of some partners that also created artwork, but roughly 30 of us from all over the world, from Malaysia to Germany to England to every crevice, nook and cranny of the world, there was somebody that was selected, right? And people had created from every background. You had people that worked for agencies, you had people that were artists, you had people like myself that work for technology companies, people that are in copywriting. All of them just genuinely had an interest and a love for what's happening right now in our space with generative AI, and kind of the forefront of technology, was just interested and curious. I think the one commonality that we all shared was an extreme curiosity for what's possible out of the technologies that are being developed. That was the biggest commonality I saw, is like an extreme curiosity from all of us.
So 30 of you came together in this 3-day kind of event after having submitted and been selected. So can you show us quickly, and then we'll come back to this, what you submitted that won?
Yeah. So these are the first two AI images that I ever created. Now I've created tens of thousands of them at this point, but these were the first two. So I'm a huge space fan. I'm also a huge fan of Porsche and Coca-Cola. So I figured maybe I'd bring kind of those two passions together, and said, I gave some simple prompts. Take this bottle, the classic silhouette of the Coke bottle, and make it the Starship from SpaceX, and make it the official drink of Mars. And this is the result that I got.
And what platform did you use? Did you use Midjourney, DALL-E 2? What did you use?
Yeah, so this was generated out of the Coca-Cola Create Real Magic Platform 1, version 1, which was off of DALL-E 2.0. So these are DALL-E 2.0 images. So obviously you'll see the hands and some things that aren't quite as advanced as some of the newer platforms from Midjourney and the like. But these are also roughly 6 months old now. So that does show you how fast the technology has advanced from even 6 months ago.
So these are old now because of being done 6 months ago. So did they give you a brief to do this, or or did you just come up with it? Was there a brief on LinkedIn and then you followed it and this is what you came up with, or what did they do?
There was a quick brief that said, hey, submit your artwork, and if you're selected, we'll feature your work in Times Square and Piccadilly Circus in London. And we're going to invite you to Atlanta. And it was just a kind of a basic contest, right? And I did it and was intrigued of, okay, like I'm into this technology and think it could be something fun to try. And great, if my work gets selected and it's in Times Square or Piccadilly Circus, that's awesome. But at the time that I did this, I don't think I expected that. So seeing it later was hard to believe it was real.
So that was the incentive for their contest to all the creators out there. If you submit using a generative AI tool, some artwork, we will select X winners, and then the winners of those would get potentially put in Times Square, Piccadilly Circus, and then you mentioned also New York Fashion Week.
Yeah, so the New York Fashion Week was actually something that came out of the working sessions after that wasn't part of the original offering, but that was something that came out of the working sessions that we did at the Coca-Cola headquarters with the team. But that wasn't part of the New York Fashion Week, was an additive piece.
Yeah, so that came, but still, so was the incentive, is that what you think creators were incentivized by, just seeing their work up in media?
Yeah, I think it's that. And it's when you think about the best brands in marketing globally, like a few come to mind: Coca-Cola, Disney, Nike, right? There's a handful that really stand out. And I think anytime that you're a creative or anybody that just values your ideas and your work, I think the idea of having Coca-Cola publish your work and put it up in some of the largest cities in the world is attractive. If nothing else, like the selfie with your art to then put in your portfolio, it's a nice feather to have in the cap. And I think there's a lot of people that resonated with and was a driver, right? I think we were all there at the end of the day, because it's incredible to have Coca-Cola that's had iconic people like Andy Warhol and publish their art, to think about your name even in the same stratosphere as some of those great creators.
That's amazing. And it's interesting because with Pratik Thakar, who is running this as global head of generative AI, he was quoted as saying that what he found fascinating is that now that Instagram kind of makes everybody a possible influencer, and TikTok makes everybody a possible entertainer, And AI is now making everybody a possible creator. And so he was quoted as saying that, which I found was pretty fascinating and very relevant to today, that you don't, that this allowed a lot of people, even with just a tech background or non-tech background, to use the tools and actually get their work displayed in Times Square, which is an honor, of course. So congratulations for that. Can you tell us a little bit about, yeah, we're back to here. Tell us a little bit about how Bain and like how these other folks kind of played in, especially around the legal issues, because one of the things that we've heard, and we heard at our conference in Boston and MIT professors, everyone's worried about the ethical implications of this and the rights, et cetera. Tell us a little bit about how Coca-Cola handled that.
Yeah, Coca-Cola has done an incredible job, in my interaction with them, and I think they're really looking at this. Everyone has a fear of just the ramifications of what is going on right now in generative AI, and what are the ramifications of technologies that we're building and deploying, not just today, but months, years from now, right? And I think the beautiful part that I saw from Coca-Cola is their willingness to admit that we're all in this together because none of us know. We're all figuring it out as we go. But they're leaning into it and bringing in their legal resources to explore all the case law, the study. We talked about and had sessions where we talked through. There's a great example in the Supreme Court right now of somebody that illustrated a book using generative AI, and they're able to copyright the text, but not the images, right? And we spent a good bit of time talking about how not only our opinions of what should be, shouldn't be, who should own the copyright work. But I think Coca-Cola has done a fantastic job of making sure they're using technologies through Stable Diffusion and ethically sourced AI imaging to make sure that they're not using work that's going to be deemed copyrighted later down the road. We talked in good detail about the Getty Images case that's currently going on, where if you pull in a prompt of previously in some of these imaging platforms, you'd say, I want a Manchester United soccer player kicking the game-winning goal, and you'd see the watermark of Getty Images in the AI, rendering, right? That's a really clear example of an image that was copyrighted that is pulling through, but there's a lot of less open and easily visible cases of that, just from stylists, of artists and whatnot. So I think Coke has done a really fantastic job of bringing in other legal resources. Not just their own internal teams, but professors and legal heads from different boards and departments and organizations around the country. They're really crowdsourcing their understanding of where the law is going to where they can stay ahead of it. And I think that's what is needed. And I think you have to take some risks, but you also want to have the legal backing behind you to know that what you're putting out there is going to be safe for the brand.
Yeah, there's a lot of brands. We had done a bunch of case studies, just kind of evaluating different brands and who was staying ahead of this. And you mentioned the big ones, but there's also smaller companies and smaller brands that are really taking advantage of this and kind of using it to jumpstart, work, whether it's a website development project or, strategy work that you can use it to sort of, we used to call it like 1,000 interns at your fingertips. It sort of helps you get ahead of it and get a little crib to get you started if you're having a block. But yet, I think what they did as a big brand, which is very smart on their part, is bringing everybody together at the beginning of this and continuing to invite people in to help in these areas, because it has stifled other people as well that are fearful of, what it's doing and all of that. And, also just creators in general that are afraid to use the technology and then have it backfire later, or have a legal problem or an ethical problem later. But so it's really interesting as we learn what they did, which I think is great. So where are they headed? Show us a little bit more about the campaign and where Coke, what learnings tell us a little bit about this piece.
Yeah, so some of the outputs, which I mentioned this previously, of this was something that came from it, right? They gave us a prompt of, hey, we're working with High Snobiety on a Coke Zero Sugar campaign for New York Fashion Week. See what you can create. And there was no guarantee that they were going to use any of this. But as you see, kind of right here on this, right below the New York Fashion Week logo, like that's an official copyright of the Coca-Cola Company created by Tyler Masker, which
Well, that's you. Yay, Tyler.
me. Uh, And I think coming out of that, that's something that really shows the democratization of this technology. Like I said, I've never thought about fashion or creating anything like this in my life. And within one working session, created something alongside my other collaborators where we all had work that was featured by Coca-Cola. So every one of us came from a different background, skill level, starting point in our understanding of the technology we were using. But by the end of these sessions, we all had work that was at a quality that Coca-Cola could use in an output with high snobiety. And I think that shows the true democratization of the technology. And then it really does provide that level of growth for somebody that doesn't have any of the skill set.
Talk a little bit about like one of the things, as a lot of CMOs and brand leaders, that when you have high profile creative and high pressure creative that needs to work, talk a little bit about the time periods you guys were given to develop these things, like to go from idea to actually execution, because that's an area that everyone is, for example, years ago, I was fortunate enough to work on big brands like Cadillac and Volkswagen and Hummer, where you had Super Bowl commercials, right? Those are the most stressful, as most of us know who've been in this business a long time. And boy, do your creators go through it. They have to come up with the ideas, the strategy, and then you have got to get it through all your systems of approvals. And then, sometimes testing. I happen to have been in a group that didn't use as much testing, more insight work. So tell me a little bit about, in this case, because you had big, high profile work that went in Times Square and whatnot for Coke. What was the time period like? How fast were you able to create and actually get it into market?
Yeah, so this was, from idea to actual like deployment of New York Fashion Week in New York was 3 weeks. So we took
Wait a
these.
minute. So you guys came up with ideas, and 3 weeks later, so there must have been like because they got to traffic it and get it onto media, right? So they gave you 3 weeks to make that deadline.
Yeah, so they had already done groundwork, right? It's not that there was zero work that had been put into this, but in terms of adding the additional pieces from, the creatives out of the Create Real Magic, it was a 3 week turnaround to add us into the fold to the
So
line that
tell
they
us about the adding us into the fold. What did Coke do? Because I think this is smart on their part. What did they do? So they already had a foundation out
yeah.
there.
So
Tell us about this.
they had a High Snobiety and Coca-Cola had partnered on a zero sugar line that had a theme, right, of kind of that black and red zero sugar look that they were looking for, and had a industrial Soho loft set up and gave us some like parameters around what their fashion show was going to look like. And then said, create things that would fit into this narrative. So they had an idea and a theme and kind of a general guidance, but it was pretty open ended. It was create some, all of us created very different things. I went with leather and red and kind of this look. Others went with completely different looks stylistically. But it was all in the theme of how does this fit into their overall style that Coca-Cola and High Snobiety are looking for, based on kind of the parameters they gave us of that industrial. Think about somebody that's a delivery driver that's delivering Coke, but in a high fashion way, right? So an industrial, urban, high fashion kind of muse is what they were looking at us to create. And so then we did. And then we reviewed it with the team, and they selected, we submitted all our works that we had created. Some of us created hundreds of ideas in a 3 hour working session. And they selected, a few from each of us to bring to life. And that was not just in like a physical good, but posters, display, like all kinds of additional work that was throughout the show and online and digital.
So they gave you the theme, basically the brief. You had 3 weeks, they picked it. And then did they have already work? Like, were the creators added to their existing work that their agencies kind of came up with? Meaning, Coke's got probably several
Yeah.
agencies they work with, and their core lead team had a theme and a look. And then they added yours into it, or how did that work?
Yeah, so to my knowledge, that's they added it into it. I don't think any of us probably changed the overall direction of that program of where it was going to go, but it was how do you then fold this in and include all of these different ideas that maybe didn't align with their initial vision, but they still felt were were great, right? So I think it probably opened up the breadth of what they may have shown, that got different styles and ideas out there. Not all of it was exactly in the lens of the high somebody line that had been developed, right? So I think that's where it's really interesting that they molded us into what could have been a very rigid, structured, we have 3 weeks, this is the way it's going to be. They folded us into the overall aesthetic of the event.
Nice. And so interesting. So in this case, Coke was using you as creators, not necessarily influencers. Influencers, usually you get asked, my experience with that is you're picking them because they have high social channels,
Yep.
etc. And you want to get their millions of followers, posting. In your case, this was creators. They were looking for the creative. Did they also invite influencers into this, or how did that work?
Not from my perspective. There was never that was never a piece of it. Was never how many followers do you have. It was always about the idea. Like the best idea wins, and like that's I think the I'm sure there was in the promotion of it, and how they were drawing people in on the ground in New York. I'm sure there was some level of social status there, just in terms of the event and the party per se. But that wasn't part of the creation process.
Yep. And then how did they, can you share a little bit about how KPIs, all of us at the end of the day, how did it perform? What kind of traffic did you get? Did you get press? Talk a little bit about why did Coke view this as a success? What were the success metrics they were trying to hit and that you all had to hit?
So for us as creatives and bringing this in, they didn't set KPIs for us. It was really an opportunity for us, and I'm sure their teams internally at Coca-Cola had KPIs on what
Wait
made.
a minute. I got to hear that again. You didn't get KPIs from Coca-Cola?
We did not. No, it was create your best idea.
Did they test any of your ideas?
Uh, in terms of, did they test like the results of any of our ideas?
Yes.
I'm sure. So all of the ideas that we provided there's still many of them that could be potentially used in the future. Some of them have already been used, like New York Fashion Week. But we worked and gave ideas and have, now we're all really truly part of that Coca-Cola family, to where they're bringing people in for additional projects, right? They're continuing to reach out and work with creators from that group for all kinds of different projects. Paul and the team from Seedly have been doing some incredible work for them for their Christmas campaigns recently. I just saw Pratik post that just today. And so there's more and more work that's still yet to come from the entire group.
So it's interesting. I would imagine that they must have had some success in that they're continuing this group and all that. And also I did see, didn't one of the contests actually result in a campaign for a new product launch?
Yeah, so their Y3000 beverage, they used AI not only for the creation, they actually used AI to develop the flavor profile of the drink. So what would the future taste like was really the goal set out for that product and that platform for the Coke Collectibles team. And then they used AI throughout the creation of the digital process, right? The launch and the content, the creative. There was AI sprinkled throughout that. So Coke has dove into generative AI across content, creative, product, really in every facet of their business. They're testing how AI can influence it.
So interesting. I heard that there was some kind of flavor, it was like Pixel something, or they named, I can't remember. What was that?
It's the Y3000, so year 3000.
Okay. So they named it. Interesting. So they're using it, and again, Coke, has always been kind of like a future. So how are they moving forward with the team, and what's next for this group?
Yeah, so right now, the first thing that's live and the kind of the immediate event horizon is Create Real Magic 2.0, which is live now. So if you go to createrealmagic.com, you can actually experience the real magic for yourself and creating Christmas and holiday cards for your family using all the classic Coke assets. This was something that we worked at with Coca-Cola in Atlanta with Bain & Co. to bring to life. So the aesthetics, the feel, the actual creation of the artwork, the social community, all of this was stuff that we gave our feedback and experience to. and is something that's live right now for everyone to go and enjoy for the holidays. So this is something that I invite everyone to go experience for themselves and see kind of the future of where this is going. And then, I think post that, I see Create Real Magic 3.0, 4.0, 5.0. I don't think this stops for Coca-Cola. I think it's just something that's really, truthfully, in its infancy. I think we're going to look back in 5 years and this will feel like it's just table stakes almost at the creativity that they're going to bring over the next few years.
It's interesting. So we talked a lot about things that went well. Tell me something that didn't go well. There's always obstacles. What happened that you guys had to overcome, or were there any things that you got that would have been done differently? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, there was nothing in the time that we spent in Atlanta that was a huge challenge. I think the main challenge is just where does it go from here, right? How do you take all of this and what do we do with all of this, right? It's great to be able to create great AI programs. But at the end of the day, I think just being in business and understanding that it's all fun, but if it's not moving results and it's not driving revenue and increasing profit for your company, not every brand is going to have the runway that a Coca-Cola may have to be creative and to really take a leap of faith on this technology from a marketing lens. I think that something that stood out for me is just that this can be done not by a giant brand. I think I see a lot of opportunity for smaller brands to look at this and to really automate and feel like a bigger brand. And so I think that it's a matter of the challenge I see is how do you take that from an individual or a small SMB sized business and bring something like this to life? I think that's the gap that I see right now. A company like Coca-Cola can throw resources and bring in people from all over the world and every agency under the sun to help work on this. But how does the average business start to leverage this technology? And I think that's a challenge that I see is and a big gap in the market is there's a lot of businesses that are going to be underserved in terms of the focus that they get. And I think that's something that as I think about tooling and just where the kind of automation can go to this technology, it is how do you democratize the ability to build platforms like this, not just use the technology, but to build for companies that maybe don't have the resources that Coke has. I think that's the challenge that I see moving forward for, medium to smaller businesses.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when we were putting together case studies and we're, always on the hunt, and there's a lot of companies and brands that won't even share their case studies because they want to stay ahead of their competition. So it was kind of good to see Coke out there. But there's smaller brands too that have kind of embraced it in certain ways. There was one that it was a fashion brand and they invented their own influencer. So it was a AI generated influencer that now has millions of followers. So it's unbelievable. And it was created for a brand. So, I mean, I think creative types are always going to create and they're always going to find cool ways to use and engage it. But I kind of agree with you that the challenge is a Coke, of course, has all the resources. What about smaller brands? And how do they use it? And there's a lot of fear too in the creative areas that this is going to replace my job. I don't want to. I'm a writer. I want to keep writing, and this thing's coming up with stuff that's pretty close. How's that going to impact my future? So anyway, thanks so much. I think, Paul, it's probably time to see if we've got any questions and engage.
We do have a handful of questions. One of them is from Todd related to the last one you just talked about, Liz. I'll read it. How do you reconcile the advancement of AI and digital advertising with the growing concern that will lead to significant job loss, particularly among artists and creative and designers?
Yeah. So I don't know, Paul, if you want to address that a little bit from your background or experience, and I can make a comment on it. I know there's a big fear, and I don't blame the industry. I'm somebody who has used creatives my whole career, some of the best in the world. I currently am working with some of the best creatives in the world, and there is a craft and intuition to it that you wonder if a machine or a large language model will ever get to that same point. And it is going to affect people's jobs. So I understand the concern. I do know that a lot of people are saying it's kind of like the internet and that you should use and learn the tool, which is why a lot of us are attending classes or kind of learning about it to get better at our craft. From my perspective, I do think there's a lot of that now, and in the future, not learning it is going to be the problem. So if you stay stuck, and not take classes and not continuously learn, I think that's what's going to be the problem. But if you are a creator and you continue to learn, you'll come up with innovative ways, and you could be Tyler, right? And come up with something. So I do think it might democratize creativity a little bit more, which is what I know Coke's goal was. But I'm hoping that it really is a case where people just need to learn different tools. Paul, do you want to answer that one as well from your point of view?
I'm happy to. That's Tyler. I'm curious just from your view. You see this as a job loss, a job creator?
I see more jobs being created. Just from my perspective, I'm implementing AI solutions across a ton of Fortune 500 brands right now. And there's actually a shortage of top talent that understands how to do this technology right now. I think there's actually a high demand, and it may be a shift in how we do our jobs. But I think that just in terms of marketing and content and creative teams that are, yes, there is a need to develop really beautiful and creative things. Sometimes you just need an extra wallpaper and a banner and things that are more tactical that usually would take an agency or a creative team weeks and thousands of dollars. And I think it frees up for these smaller businesses to where you'll probably have some downsizing in large enterprises. But I think you're going to have a lot more smaller companies, small SMB, mid-sized companies that actually bring in maybe more talent because that talent's more effective, right? They can generate more content that really moves the needle. And I think right now that some people have said, hey, we don't want to bring in creatives and artists and things of that nature because we can't measure the impact. I think that when you start to be able to get enough volume of it out there, you're going to be able to measure the impact. And it's going to take somebody to create that no matter what. Somebody still has to prompt it. You can
Somebody
automate.
has to prompt. I think that's what I keep hearing as well as, you can use Midjourney, you can use Dolly, you can use these tools, but you still have to prompt it. You need to know. So I think prompt engineering is going to become, it already has become something that we all have to get really familiar with.
And as an artist, you can also test a lot more ideas. I think that that's something stylistically, previously, if you wanted to create 10 versions of something, that was really daunting and an arduous task. And maybe you would never do 10 versions. You would do one version because of the time it took. But I think it gives just people a creative outlet to test a lot of different thoughts, concepts, ideas, and see what sticks. So I think you're going to see a lot more creativity from it, not less.
One thing I'd add quickly on the simplistic side, certainly before Gen AI hit, there were hundreds of people charging $100 an hour to write blog posts for companies. All that is gone, but there's a massive shortage for using these tools. Create 5 blog posts using the key messages I've had, but using the tools. So a little bit like what Tyler's saying. It's the canvas of tools clearly has changed, but there's a massive shortage, and we're asked all the time, where are artists who can help us create Gen AI videos and everything else? So there's a real shortage on the intersection between creative and tools. Liz has one last question here. There's a handful of questions, but Kevin asked, or maybe it's for Tyler, on the IP concern. So the creatives, you created this, who owns that artwork? And was that a concern at all, or was just excited to be part of this? And how do you see that IP ownership going forward from creatives?
Yeah, I mean, for this specific campaign and our work with Coca-Cola, we gave them the rights to the content that we created during that working session as part of the opportunity. And this is something that, as that specifically, we gave them the rights to that work. For anything that they use us for outside of that contest, that's something we would work and negotiate with Coca-Cola if they wanted to use us in the future. In terms of, I think there's a huge concern for that. And I think I think no matter what, that creative should be compensated for their work. And that's something that I firmly believe that we have to figure out. I don't have a perfect solution for it today, but I think that there's going to have to be some kind of monetization strategy for the content that went into training these large language models of where did that art come from? Where did the training come from to get that output? I think all in all, eventually, we have to find a monetization strategy that works for the industry and for everybody to make sure that artists, creatives, and people's ideas are paid what they're worth.
Yeah, I know that we keep hearing more and more concerns about that. Songwriters, lyrics, and also your data, making sure that, that's why there's all these folks that are reaching out about large language models. Which ones do they create their own? Because otherwise, are you giving your idea into the machine and the machine will use that idea for someone else? So there's all kinds of concerns about IP. I agree with you fully that this is going to be really something that's going to take a while to get figured out and make sure people that are in this business get paid for what they do.
I think that's kind of going back to Coke's, their willingness to admit that, like, from a legal standpoint, we're all figuring this out as we go. It's changing so fast and so rapidly that, you blink and you've missed what feels like 6 months worth of advancements in this field. And I think that, we're going to get to a point where we're all going to have to take a deep breath and really look at this holistically and say, okay, what have we created? And how do we make sure that everyone's protected? And right now, there's probably some gaps. I haven't identified any huge concerns on my own research, but I think there's a ton of things that are out there that we still need to address. But progress is going to continue, no matter one way or the other.
So, Liz, I think we're at time. You want to wrap up and thank our
Yeah. So Tyler, thank you so much for agreeing to join us today and sharing the Coke Real Magic campaign. For me, it is real magic. I love to see great work like that. Congratulations to you and all the creators and all the folks at Coke that came up with this. And thanks for sharing the behind the scenes. We really appreciate it and hope that you continue to follow GAI Insights. And if you have any other major breakthroughs, we'll have you back on.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it, Liz. Appreciate it, Paul. And look forward to talking again in the future.
Thank you, guys.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.